What's up, guys? Welcome to Knockers on the Bottom. I'm your host, Jay Mill. Jay Mill, if you like. Let's get into it. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. But yeah, let's get into it. So the Cowboys finally have made their hire of their defensive coordinator, Christian Parker, former Eagles defensive back coach. That kind of stands out to me there. That he's kind of working with the secondary, working with the DBs here, and we had a lot of trouble in coverage this past season. And like I touched on in earlier episodes, he helped develop Patrick Surtain. He helped develop Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell. So I mean, he does have a track record at least of helping develop young players. So I think that bodes well for someone like Savon Revel, someone like Kalen Carson, and then Deron Bland. Maybe he can just kind of incrementally help him rise his game to a more a better level. I mean, Deron Bland's not bad. It looks like his biggest enemy has been injuries. But even still, if you could just provide a little bit more balance for Deron Bland's game, I think that would be a upgrade and one of the things that he brings to the table. So personally, I like the hire. I think the Cowboys did something that they haven't done recently, which just makes me feel better that change is here. It makes me feel better that they are being pretty consistent, under Schottenheimer of, hey, let's go look for something that's different than what we've had. So I do like that. I know, it looked like the front office did the Eberflus hire and then kind of threw Schottenheimer under the belt, under the boat with the comment saying that he had a say in Eberflus being there. But it's nice to see this type of hire. This screams more Brian Schottenheimer to me. It's sort of like what he did when he looked for Clayton Adams and Connor Riley and some of those guys from the college ranks and kind of help put together his offensive staff. Looks like he's doing some of the same things. I'm not necessarily saying going for the college ranks for his defensive staff, but at least he's looking at other factors than just being a former head coach that the Cowboys are familiar with. It's something different. It doesn't mean that it's going to work. So that's part of my next question is, so I love this hire and all. I do think it's going to end up paying dividends for the Cowboys, over the short and long term. But one of my thoughts is, what happens if this doesn't work, right? This is a test case here. So, last year on offense, the test case was, going out, getting someone that the Cowboys had never, hired before and nobody else had, like Brian Schottenheimer, and then Schottenheimer doing something different when putting together his offensive staff, and the Cowboys kind of meddling and doing what they do when it comes to the defensive staff. Now, Schottenheimer has, his hands in the hiring of the defensive staff in his second year, but what if this defense sucks? What if they're horrible? What if they have problems still stopping people from scoring? What if it backfires on the Cowboys and this ends up being one of the worst defensive hires they've had? That's my question. And the reason why I question that is because it's taken a long time to get Jerry and Steven to do something different with the Cowboys, right? To listen to someone from the outside and someone that's saying, hey, we have to do things this way. If we want to accomplish something that we haven't accomplished, we have to do things we've never done. Instead of going for status quo, we got to just, cast a wide net, look for the best, right? So they're doing that now. Now the Cowboys, over these, 3 decades since they've been to the Super Bowl, they've been doing things their way. Jerry got rid of Jimmy Johnson and wanted to make sure that he did things his way, right? So his way hasn't worked, right? So now we're to the point where the Cowboys are doing things a little bit differently, and I credit Schottenheimer for most of that, saying, hey, we're going to do it differently. Let's see if it works. My question is, if doing it differently this time doesn't work, does that stop the Cowboys from ever venturing out again and trying a head coach that somebody doesn't know, a la Schottenheimer, trying a defensive coordinator someone doesn't know, via Christian Parker, just kind of still going out and still trying to make different moves and different steps and trying to turn over every rock to get the best that they can get, right? So this is going to be an important test case, and it kind of sucks because all the pressure is going on Schottenheimer with this. All the pressure is going on Christian Parker with this because I could definitely see a franchise like the Cowboys settling back into bad habits if something like this doesn't work. Now, if it does work, it's going to be interesting. And I do like the hire because personally, I do think it's going to work. So the one thing that I like about Christian Parker is people are talking about him in league circles the same way they talk about Clayton Adams. Hey, this guy's eventually going to be a head coach. He's eventually going to be one of not only just a head coach, one of the better young head coaches in the league. He's up and coming. He's a fast riser. I like that because that means he's hungry to get where he has to go. So this is not going to be a situation where, it's like Eberflus. I kind of bounced around a little bit, got my opportunity, and I failed at it. But, I still failed into another defensive coordinator job in the NFL. This guy's not like that. He's up and coming. He's still young. He's still trying to climb the ladder of success as far as he can. And so that tells me he's looking to be very successful when it comes to being the Cowboys defensive coordinator because he has aspirations of being a head coach one day. So just having that type of young, fresh mind in the building that is saying, A, thank you guys for this opportunity, but B, this is just another stop on the train. This isn't my final destination, but this is just another place, on the step ladder to my ultimate goal of being, the most successful at the highest level that I can be. Having someone like that does things because A, he's going to be looking to make his players the best. He wants that reputation that I take my players, and I put them in positions to succeed. And B, he's going to demand the success because his career is depending on the success. So I do like that. I think I like that part of it the most because A, there are some talented players on the Cowboys. And B, you have 2 first-round picks as your first year defensive coordinator. Because you're a first year defensive coordinator, there's very little to no pressure on you. I mean, you're coming in with the worst defense pretty much of the last 40 years is what you're replacing. So, I mean, in your first year, if you're just better than being the worst defense ever, like you're probably going to get a second year at this thing. And honestly, with the way the offense have played, I mean, if you were a little bit worse than average, you would have at least been in the playoffs. Now we can talk about what the success would have been once you had gotten there. That might be a little bit different. But at least if you're getting to the point where you're slightly above average on defense, or a slightly below average on defense, you're an improvement, and you're probably an improvement by 2 wins, which is exactly what you needed to get into the playoffs. I mean, you would have finished with the same record as the Packers at that point, and they made the playoffs. So you were close, and having someone who might be competent as a defensive coordinator will help. And then the second thing I'm looking at is, if he does okay this year, that's encouraging. And then, on top of that, we would have next year to kind of continue to add and build on to the scheme. I think, you have signed a defensive coordinator that no matter how great he does, you probably have him for at least 2 years, more likely 3, which coincides right with Schottenheimer's coaching contract as well as Dak Prescott's money. And CeeDee Lamb's money, and if the Cowboys are smart, probably with George Pickens' money, just kind of making sure all these things kind of line up to see what happens over these next few years. So just wanted to hop on and talk to you guys about that and let you know, hey, this is how I feel about Christian Parker. Now, one of the other things that's going to be interesting to look out for is what type of defense he plays. So he's coming from Vance Joseph, who plays, a little bit of an over front. Some people call it a 3-4. It can be a 3-4. It can be a 4-3 over. I mean, the bottom line is on most plays, 4 guys are coming and, 7 guys are doing other things. Now, do the Cowboys have the personnel for that? In some ways they do. In some ways they don't. The 3 defensive tackles, Kenny Clark, Quentin Mitchell. Quentin Williams, and Osa Odigizua. kind of help you have some of that, right? So you have your three down, you have Donovan Ezaraku, who can be a stand-up guy. You have James Houston, who could be a stand-up guy. You can bring Jadavion. He was rushing, sometimes handing the dirt, sometimes standing up. You can bring Fowler back. But what's going to be interesting, and then you have Overshown too, who's an off-ball linebacker who I would definitely put in that role sometimes. But it's going to be interesting to see what you have in the middle there, because you don't really have middle linebackers. I mean, Leofau could probably play one of them, but you definitely need to draft there, and that's what we've been doing. We've been talking about draft prospects. I won't get into any today, but the next episode I'll have more for you guys. But it'll be interesting if he plays a true 3-4. If he plays an overfront, it's going to be very similar to what we were doing last year once we traded for Quinnen Williams and having the 5-down lineman. It's going to be very similar to that, except your two outside linebackers on the outside are going to be standing up most of the time instead of having their hand in the dirt. But pretty much any other responsibilities that you're used to are going to be similar. On rundowns and on pass downs, they're just going to be a nickel anyway. So then it'll be your traditional 4-man front with the two linebackers and the rest are DBs. So as far as his base, though, we're going to see. It might be an overfront, might be a 3-4. That'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how he is at sequencing, calling plays throughout the course of the game. The way you call it in the first quarter isn't the same way you call it in the fourth quarter. Isn't the same way you call it on 3rd and long as opposed to 3rd and short, 3rd and medium. It's not the same way you call plays for every single quarterback. How you deal with, down and distance with Lamar Jackson will be different with how you deal with down and distance against Matthew Stafford, right? So just that type of stuff there is going to be interesting to see what kind of game plans he has. But one of his strong suits, in my opinion, is he's been touted as a big film guy, a big knower of what's going on, scheme design, understanding tendencies, because he is just a lock me in the film room and let me watch football type of guy. So I think that's going to be great. It will be interesting to see his communication. He's younger, so, in theory, he should have a little bit better communication with some of the guys coming into the league. But all in all, love the hire. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hit me up on Twitter at jmillerIYL. You can also hit me up at knockersdownthebottom@outlook.com, knockersdownthebottom@gmail.com. Any questions, any comments you have, leave them below. But yeah, thank you guys. Love you guys so much. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, I'm your host, J Mill. J Mill, if you like. This has been Knockers on the Bottom. Peace.